تظاهرات در نیویورک همزمان با اجلاس شورای امنیت. محکومیت دروغ پردازی و همدستی کوبلر با رژیم آخوندی و حکومت مالکی در جنایت علیه بشریت. 25 تیر 1392 16 ژوئیه 2013.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the honor of being here today in front of the seat of what should be the protection of human rights, the United Nations. The United Nations was founded under a charter of protection for those most vulnerable around the world. Today, that charter is going to be called into question if Martin Kubler is allowed to continue to perpetrate his lies about the humanitarian condition of the protected peoples of Camp Ashraf and Camp Liberty. You see, the reason we are here today is because these vulnerable refugees of political persecution by Iran and their puppet regime of Iraq are in jeopardy of once again being attacked at the direction of the mullahs in Tehran, being attacked by their puppet regime in Iraq, the regime led by Nouri al-Maliki. We know that there is an intention because we have seen it not once, not twice, but on 3 prior occasions. There have been attacks on liberty, the place that Martin Kubler, the UN person in charge, has deemed safe and secure for the people in Camp Liberty. So why does he continue to insist in the face of 3 attacks? Why does Martin Kubler continue to insist that it is okay, that it is safe, that Camp Liberty is suitable for the refugees protected under the 4th Geneva Convention? Why does Martin Kubler continue to propagate his lies? Well, we know the truth today, and the truth was told to us by one of his staff members, Mr. Boumediene. And we know today from Tahir Boumediene, his staff assistant at the United Nations, that he covered up the truth, that he deliberately misled the United Nations, and that he lied to the residents of Camp Ashraf, convincing them that it was okay and safe. Shame on you, Martin Kobler.
Shame on you, Martin Kobler. Shame on you, Martin Kobler. Shame on you, Martin Kobler. Shame on you,
Martin Kobler is once again going to try to propagate his lies. But the United Nations can reject those lies. And all of you today are gathered here in front of the United Nations to call on the United Nations to reject the lies of Martin Kobler's report to the UN Security Council. Isn't that right?
yes. Martin Kobler, shame on you! Shame on you! Martin Kobler, shame on you! Shame on you! Martin Kobler, shame on you! Shame on you! Martin Kobler, shame on you! Shame on you!
This should be the cause of all free people who care about human dignity, who care about human rights, who want the United States of America and who want the United Nations to stand for human rights, to stand for the protection of human liberty. So that is why we're here today, because this isn't just an Iranian cause, this is a cause of humanity. This is a cause of humanity. So 50 years ago, my uncle, President John F. Kennedy, stood in Berlin at a time of great challenge. And he said, "Ich bin ein Berliner," to say to the people of Berlin that all people were Berliners in their struggle to be free. That's why I am proud today to say Man Irani Hastam today. Man Irani Hastam, Man Irani Ashrafi, Man Irani Liberty. Because the fight for the human rights of the people in Camp Liberty is really a fight for all human rights. And that's why you have so many respected speakers here today to talk about that. But that fight is being called into question today at the UN Security Council, where we have somebody who is charged to protect the UN Charter, supporting human rights, who's betraying that charter. And his name is Martin Kobler. And we need the world to know just how many times he's lied. We need the world to know that even his own staff member, Tahir Boumediene, said that he lied under oath to the United States Congress when he said and represented that it would be safe for the refugees who are under the protection of the Fourth Geneva Convention and who are being transferred from Ashraf to Liberty, that they would be protected and safe. If that were the case, why isn't Martin Kobler able to go to Camp Liberty and spend time there? Because he's afraid for his own life to spend any time investigating the attacks that have happened on 3 previous occasions. So what is our message today? Our message is the UN should reject the statement of Martin Kobler or else the UN will become complicit with the lies of Martin Kobler. And if the UN becomes complicit with the lies of Martin Kobler, who sit by and do nothing while Martin Kobler continues to propagate his lies, we're not going to allow that to happen. And I am telling you today, your presence here today is helping to change the course of human history. Not only on behalf of the family members you hold dear in Camp Liberty and Ashraf, but also on behalf of all peoples around the world. Because if we free the people of liberty, we will not only be freeing them, but we will be freeing the freedom fighters who are seeking to change the brutal dictatorship in the country of Iran. And that is why we're standing up for them, because they're standing up for all humankind as they fight the oppression and tyranny of the mullahs in Tehran. God bless all of you, and thank you for your fight.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. And isn't it amazing that there are so many voices out here, and yet the world is listening to one voice in there? That we are here to say that the voice of Martin Kobler is not the true voice of what is happening in liberty. It is not the true voice of the opposition to the Iranian mullahs. That what Martin Kobler is saying today is not the story that we need the world to hear. What we need the world to hear is the story that we are telling here. Those of us gathered here and around the world in support of a free Iran. I come to you as one who grew up often frustrated with hearing about what was happening in the UN. So growing up under apartheid, we would hear about debates in the UN about us and about our lives and our struggle. And so very rarely were our voices heard. We heard people saying what it was we wanted. We heard people saying what it was we needed. And yet our voices, those people on the ground, our voices were not heard for many years. And the reason that I am here today is I have been one of those who have said, I don't want others to go through what we went through. I want the world to be a world that pays attention to the voices of those affected by oppression, not to the voices of those whose lives are actually fairly comfortable as they report what they think about oppression. So I am here because I want the UN to live up to its mission, to live up to its philosophy of being the place that assures the humanity of every single person on this planet. And for it to do that, it has to be willing to question the words and statements of Martin Kobler. Over and over, it has been proved that Kobler lies. Not to put any diplomatic language on it. He has simply lied over and over to the world about the PMOI, about the conditions at liberty, about why people needed to be moved from Ashraf, about the resistance of people to the move to liberty. Now he says people at liberty and at Ashraf are refusing to be relocated. Why would people want to stay in a prison camp where their lives are in danger if they were really offered another alternative? And why are we not asking Martin Kobler that question? Why is the UN not sending an independent investigative team to Liberty and to Ashraf to speak to the residents? Why is the world simply listening to the voice of one man who has been proven to lie? Why? We are here because we say we believe the UN is better than that. We know that part of the reason they have attempted to close Ashraf is because Ashraf was not simply a refugee camp. Ashraf was a model for what that region can look like. Ashraf was a place where Iranians and Iraqis worked together. The Iraqis from surrounding communities came to Ashraf for medical care, came to Ashraf for cultural events, came to Ashraf for sporting events. They saw the people of Ashraf as their brothers and sisters. And in that model of Ashraf and the surrounding communities, we saw what an Iraq and Iran guided and ruled by democratic leaders could look like, what their relationship could actually be. And that's why Ashraf was a threat. It was a threat because it showed how the Iraqis and Iranians can actually live in peace and support one another. It showed what a democratic organization and community looked like. And there is nothing more frightening to dictators than a vision of democracy. We know that the first big lie from Martin Kobler was that liberty was a safe place for the people of Ashraf to move to. He said that it had all the supplies that they needed, that it had sufficient accommodation, that it had clean water, that it was a secure place. And we know from looking at the pictures from Liberty that none of that was ever true. We know that the people moved to Liberty with resistance, not because they were opposed to being interviewed by the UN, not because they were opposed to being resettled, but because they knew that they would be unsafe in that place. And their fears have been proved over and over again. They have been attacked. They have had their equipment taken away. It has been refused to bring even the minimum medical supplies that they had in Ashraf to be brought to Liberty. They have been living in accommodation that is vulnerable to attack. They have been living in accommodations that do not have clean water, that do not protect them from the cold or the heat. We know that once the world accepted that move to liberty, then we were already down that slippery path of the attacks that we have now seen. So today, we are here to say to the UN, don't listen to Kobler. We are here to say, listen to the people of Ashraf and Liberty. If you want to know the truth, if you want to know the truth about what is happening in Liberty, go to Liberty and speak to the residents. If you want to know the truth about the attacks, go and see the facilities, see the lack of protection. Kobler has said that the people of Liberty are not free to speak to him, that the leadership has refused to allow people to speak freely to him. Well, if the leadership were afraid to allow Kobler to speak to the people of Liberty, why would they be asking the international community to send an independent investigative team? What would they do? Hide the residents when the team came? No, they have asked for an independent investigative team because they want the world to hear from the lips of the residents of Liberty their experience and their concerns. We ask the UN, as representing the people of the world, to go and speak to the people at Liberty, to go and look at those facilities and ask themselves whether they would be willing to have their family members exposed in that camp, to ask whether they would be willing themselves to live in those conditions. Because if they are not willing to do so, then clearly it is wrong to ask the people who have been moved from Ashraf to live in those conditions. We ask the UN, as representing the people of the world, that at the very least, insist that Liberty have security walls built around it. But better yet, allow the people of Liberty to return to Ashraf while their applications for resettlement are being considered. At the very least, we ask that the UN listen to the pleas of the people. As I said earlier, too often, those who suffer have their voices silenced. All too often, people who have no investment in their freedom and liberation take it upon themselves to speak for the oppressed, to speak for those who suffer. We know that those in Ashraf and in Liberty are well qualified to speak for themselves. And we ask the UN to allow them to do so that we can be gathered at a celebration, not at a protest. That we can be gathered at least at a celebration that the people have been allowed to return to Ashraf. But we know that the real celebration we are waiting for is the celebration when the people of Iran have the opportunity to elect a democratically elected government, when the people of Iraq have the right and we ask the UN because the UN is supposed to represent us, the people of the world. And we, the people of the world, say we want a free and democratic Iran. We, the people of the world, say we want peace in that region, a true peace, a peace based on human rights, based on liberty, based on a people's right to choose their own leaders. We say to the UN, we believe in the principles on which you were founded. We believe in the philosophy of the UN. And we ask you to stand with the people of Ashraf and liberty in refusing to listen to the lies of Martin Kobler. We believe, we know that the day of liberty will come. We know that because we know injustice can never survive forever. But we ask the UN to please now be on the right side of history. Thank you.
Thank you for the kind remarks. Recently, I did an investigation. I found it impossible to continue the investigation on Durrani without extensively examining Martin Kobler. And what I continue to find is Martin Kobler to be one of the most despicable people I have ever had to deal with, and I have dealt by phone directly with Martin Kobler, and I have listened to his lies and his promises when he assured us Camp Liberty was going to be a very safe and secure place. And it is a shame that the residents, that the MEK leadership, that all the people, myself included, were deceived and lied to by Martin Kobler and told that Camp Liberty was still a very modern camp. When the residents got there, they found the photos had been doctored, as our friend Mr. Bermuda has also assured us. The residents were denied basic water. And finally, after a lot of work and a lot of harassment by Colonel Sadiq and his officers, they were able to get the water. After the February attack by rockets, Katyusha rockets, Colonel Sadiq found not enough residents got killed, so he immediately started moving all the barriers, all the T-walls, the 17,500. The next rocket attack that hit killed 2 people and left many wounded. So far, between the rocket attacks, 10 have died. Martin Kobler assured us that the Camp Liberty would have maximum force protection. Being denied, the residents are not allowed to transfer equipment down from Liberty. They're not even for their power, for their basic protection. Their helmets and their vests are being denied from being brought down from Camp Ashraf. Instead, Kobler blames the he blames the MEK leadership, and he blames the residents for every one of his failures. In the course of my investigation, I went through and I talked by phone to numerous residents and was able to go through all the problems that they were enduring. If I can talk to them from thousands of miles away by telephone, his Yanami monitors on the ground could easily have talked to him. Instead, he puts on the ground his despicable clone named Masoud Durrani, who goes around harassing the residents. Martin Kobler's hero must have been Joseph Goebbels, Adolf Hitler's Minister of Propaganda. It was Joseph Goebbels who said, the bigger the lie, the more it will be believed. And that is exactly what Martin Kobler is doing. It's time for Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and other members of the Security Council to call Martin Kobler out for his lies. Today is the final time that Martin Kobler will appear before the UN as the head of the UNAMI. He's failed. Tyranny is at and throughout Baghdad and Iraq. People disappear into Maliki's secret prisons. Bombs go off throughout the country. People also have demanded the removal of Martin Kobler from Iraq. Not just the residents of Liberty and Ashraf, but throughout Iraq. His removal has been demanded. It's time for Ban Ki-moon to listen and not just remove Martin Kobler from Iraq, but remove Martin Kobler from the United Nations and send him back to Germany where he can go visit, where he can go pay tribute to the grave of Joseph Goebbels. Martin Kobler says they don't have access to the residence. This is a lie. I always had access to the residence. Matter of fact, I have announced many times to the UN and to the State Department that I am ready to go back to Iraq and work with the residents right now. At no expense to the UN, at no expense to the State Department. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
We're talking about 3,000 people who have suffered for well over a decade. We have to create partnerships of conversation with the United Nations, with the State Department of the United States of America. We must open the doors of communication. I hope and I pray that we, working together, can begin to open those doors. That Ambassador Kobler, as he leaves, will not shut the door further on us. But we must take up the cause further and more deeply for the people at Camp Liberty so that they can enjoy the same freedoms and the same opportunities that we do. May God bless all of you in your work, but mostly may God bless the people of Camp Liberty. May they be protected from all who seek to do them harm. Thank you so much.
My brothers, my sisters, I'm going to begin at a very strange place. I think in terms of the United Nations, and we've been talking about Kobler, we've been talking about all kinds of smelly situations. But there comes a time when we need a washing, a total washing. And that is more or less the theme or the mission of the United Nations, of bringing peace, creating human rights. But Kobler is only an instance of the smelliness that's happening in the United Nations. He's only one expression of what is wrong. So we have to say to the United Nations, look inside of you and see what needs to be changed in a systemic way. Because if that is not changed, then the faces might change, but the problems will remain the same. How can an institution like the United Nations allow for this kind of behavior and this kind of outright lies? Kobler is, as I said, only one instance of what is wrong with the system. The Secretary General and all those who hold positions The United States that is so influential, the Security Council that is meeting, all of these persons have to stop and listen to what others have said and say, could all of them be wrong and Kubler be the only one who is right? Something has to be wrong. When you have the human rights chief going in to Ashraf and being told at the gate by the doctor, the Iraqi doctor, nobody was killed in the attack, nobody was injured, and then he goes in and counts 36 bodies on the ground, and he goes back to his boss, Kubler, and says to him, this is what I saw. And Kubler is going to say to him, keep quiet. So brothers and sisters, I am hoping that we will become and remain the troublemakers that my Lord was. Not the troublemaker that turns cars over. That's not the troublemaker I'm talking about. I'm talking about the one who makes trouble so that truth and justice and peace will reign. And that is my command. May God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. But we speak directly to the UN Security Council today, whom Mr. Copeland will be speaking to, giving his final report. U.S. Council, you know what the facts are. You know the truth. You know that there's been a great deal of propaganda as well as a great deal of unnecessary, inhumane treatment and misrepresentation of a people who have only been faithful and who have kept their word. In the United States of America, Mr. President, Mr. Barack Obama, the people during Camp Liberty are on record as protected personnel. You have a professional constitutional responsibility to ensure that they are well protected from all of the hurt, harm, and danger of the opposing force. So we're asking you today, Mr. President, to speak to the UN Security Council and remind them of the 3 rocket attacks in the last 4 months. Remind them that Camp Liberty is a concentration camp and not a camp for human beings to preside in. Remind them that it is inhumane to have to live in total fear at all times, because all of the tears in the buckle support system has been purposely removed. Replace them, if not, replace the people in Camp Ashraf. Return the people to Camp Ashraf. Return the people to Camp Ashraf. Can I get a support of saying, return the people to Camp Ashraf? Return them. Return them to Camp Ashraf, that they may be properly cared for, that they may have the proper protection and the security until something has happened. And I call on all of the clergy today from all over the world today, as the Muslim faith celebrates a peace, a part of Ramadan. They have given up their commitment to their faithfulness in order to come here today and be a part of this historical movement to show that they are not only people of words, but they are people of action. So I'm asking each one of you today throughout the world, not only pray for the people at Camp Liberty, but we need you to employ the action of stepping up to the table and making themselves known to all of your representatives in the House of Representatives, the U.S. Senator, all of the decision makers within this country need to know that there are people, there are real people, there are in Camp Liberty that need humane treatment and support. Support the people there at Camp Liberty. Replace them and return them to Camp Ashraf. God bless each one of you and continue to hold fast to the movement. Do not give up, but continue to march on until the day is dawn. For we shall overcome this situation. God bless you.
First and foremost, I would like to say thank you to the Iranian people for bringing a consciousness back to the United States of America. Over here we have the United Nations. It was supposed to be founded on human rights, social justice, and world peace. As we live today, there is no peace. As we live at this very moment, there is no social justice, at least not for the people at Ashraf. The United States of America gave these people their protection. The United States of America guaranteed that these people will be treated justly and fairly. The United States of America says, yes, Ashraf, you have rights under the 4th Geneva Convention. And yet, the United Nations has turned its back. The United States has turned its back. We have people today, each and every one of them, who have signed up to Maryam Rajavi's 10-point plan for peace. Not one of them has ever committed a crime against America. Not one of them has ever committed a crime against anyone on this planet, with the exception of the mullahs and with the exception of the ayatollahs. As a world community, and we're not just Iranian people here, we're not just Persian people here, we are of all races, creeds, and colors, we're of all religions. We should be standing up to these United Nations every single day, demanding that they adhere to their own mandate of peace, justice, and human rights.
درود به غیرتتون، به همتتون، درود به میهن پرستیتون. هر قطره از عرقه هایی که میریزید با خونهای اونهایی که به شهادت رفتن برای آزادی و استقلال ایران قاطی میشه. من به شما قول میدم سونامی ایجاد خواهد کرد که تمام دار و دسته خمینی و خمینی صفتان و خونهایی که مماشاتگران خارجی هستند را از بین خواهد برد. درود بر شما که در این 35 سال واقعا کوتاه نیامدید، چه در داخل و چه در خارج ایران، اونهایی که اون آقای مسعود رجبی با آهشون، با قدمهاشون، با پولشون، با جانشون تو میدون آمدن و آزادی میدان این مردم ایران رو طلب کردن. درود بر شما که در خارج از ایران ساکت ننشستید و شما وقتی دیدید که 30 و اندی سال پیش مملکت شما رو و مردم شما رو به گیر و گل گرفتن، نیامدید در خارج جا خوش کنید، آمدید تا صدای مردم مظلوم ایران بشید که به گیر و گل گرفته شدن، آزاد نیستن حرف خودشون بزنن، نمیتونن احساساتشون رو بیان کنن، زیر سلطه جنایتکاران هستیم. آنهایی هم که حرفی میزنن در داخل بدترین کارهای ضد انسانی و ضد اسلامی و ضد ایرانی رو برایشان انجام میدن. ما آمدیم امروز اینجا یک هفته و اون هم این هست که این کوبلر نماینده سازمان ملل متحد رو بهش یادآوری کنیم، به سازمان ملل متحد یادآوری کنیم، بگیم که این کوبلر دید وقتی که با فشارش، با تبلیغات دروغش بچه های اشرف رو، دوستان ما رو، سرداران ایران زمین رو از اشرف به لیبرتی ورد با هزاران حیله که اگر شما برید اونجا درهای دنیا روی شما بازه. هیچ کاری نکرد و بعد این آمد اونجا و تمام کارهایی که میخواست انجام بده به نفع رژیم خمینی و مالکی کرد. وقتی جان 60 نفر رو گرفتن، به این 60 نفر به شهادت رسیدن، 14 نفر در اثر محرومیت جانشون رو دادن، 1300 نفر زخمی شدن، آیا یک کلام گفت که مالکی جانی تو هستی که این اتفاقات میفته؟ در عوض آمد سخنرانی کرد و تشکر کرد از مالکی و از دار دسته مالکی، تشکر کرد که اینها همکاری میکنن و مجاهدین هستن که همکاری نمیکنن. این جنایتکار، این کسی که نمیدونم، شرمم میاد پیش شما اسمی بهش بذارم، واقعا این جنایتکار کاری کرد که مردم ایران توف و لعنت بهش بفرستن و بعد دنیا در برابر سازمان ملل متحد باید بیاد، سازمان ملل متحد به دنیا پاسخ بده.